We've got huge breaking news regarding Ebola, the unprecedented first outbreak in the United States. We've also got Joe Biggs reporting live from the scene, ground zero at the Texas hospital, with a special report there with Josh Owens that he's filmed today. Also, Gerald Celente coming up in the third hour to talk about the latest financial situation and Bitcoin. We've got callers coming up on Ebola in the second hour as well. Of course, the latest news is that now they're saying there is likely a second patient infected with Ebola. We've had officials give interviews on Texas television this morning saying that one of the family members of the Ebola victim, who was confirmed as having the virus yesterday in Dallas, has also likely been exposed. That's not been confirmed yet, but they're now saying that it is indeed possible that a second family member has been exposed to the Ebola virus. Basically, the timeline which we need to go through is that the patient arrived in Dallas on a flight from Liberia on September the 20th, showing no symptoms of the disease. Obviously, we know that it could take up to 3 weeks for the symptoms to actually develop, to actually show in the case of an Ebola sufferer. He started feeling sick September 24th, visited his doctor or a hospital, we're not sure which yet, on September 26th. And this is the key here. This is what's amazing about this story. He was given antibiotics on September 26 after showing symptoms for 2 days and immediately sent home, even though he had traveled from Liberia. And this is what's causing a lot of condemnation directed towards health officials in Texas this morning, which is the fact that this individual had the symptoms, had Ebola for 2 days. He was sent home. Basically, he was walking amongst the population for 4 days with this virus. And there you see the article up on Infowars.com. Texas Ebola patient was sent home for 2 days with antibiotics. So he already had the virus 2 days before that. He's been walking around Dallas, Texas for 4 days. Obviously, Ebola, they say at the moment, is not airborne. Other scientific research suggests that it may well be. But for at least 4 days, he was active in the Dallas area, amongst the community, amongst his family members. And again, CDC concerned about airborne transmission of Ebola virus. Of course, we had the Canadian study back in 2012, which proved that Ebola could be transmitted via the air from pigs to monkeys. We've had several top officials go public over the last few weeks, including a major editorial in the New York Times saying that health officials are concerned that it could have mutated, that it could have gone airborne. No confirmation of that so far, but it's obviously of concern. We're going to play some clips coming up. We've got Zachary Thompson, the director of Dallas County Health and Human Services, who gave an interview with WFAA this morning, confirming, or basically suggesting, indicating that there was a second Ebola case, one of the family members of the victim that's there in the Texas Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas. Also, Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, gave an interview on CNN, which we're going to play a little later if we have time, in which he said the 4-day period where this Ebola patient was walking around Dallas was, quote, a significant period of time. And he made the point that although this is transmitted via bodily fluids, it could be transmitted merely by shaking the hand of an Ebola victim. So you got to think, you know, this guy's been walking around Texas, Dallas for 4 days without being isolated. As I said, September 24th was when he first showed symptoms. He was walking around Dallas, and so that's why there are concerns that this could spread. Of course, the CDC is trying to dampen down the hysteria. It's Paul Joseph Watson filling in for Alex Jones on this Wednesday edition of The Alex Jones Show. Of course, we've got the huge breaking Ebola news. It emerged last night that a first Ebola patient confirmed to have the virus in the United States in Dallas. We're going to go to a clip now, which is the likelihood that a second patient has been infected, one of the family members of this individual in Dallas. And this is Zachary Thompson, director of Dallas County Health and Human Services. He gave an interview with WFAA, and he said that there's likely to be a second case. Here's that clip.
Let me be real frank to the Dallas County residents. The fact that we have one confirmed case, there may be another case that is a close associate with this particular patient. So I want to be frank. This is real. There should be a concern, but it's contained to the specific family members and close friends at this moment.
Okay, that is Zachary Thompson, Health and Human Services official, who basically acknowledged the fact that it's very likely there's a second Ebola case, one of the family members of the victims. But live on the line now with more breaking Ebola news is Alex Jones. Alex, welcome to the show.
Absolutely, Paul. Now, I've been explaining to people from the beginning that I've seen major signs of scripting to all of this. And when I say scripting, I don't mean the Dallas County or Dallas City officials. I don't mean 99.9% of people in our own government, but major scripting at the CDC, at the Obama administration level, and at the United Nations level. We've been saying this for several months. It is unprecedented to bring dozens and dozens of hot, infected, patient number one, ground zero, Ebola victims into the United States. It used to show up in 3 days. It shows up in 22 days now, meaning someone can spread and spread and spread. The default was it was level 4 containment, illegal, and those laws are still on the books, to bring someone with smallpox or Ebola or anything of that nature into the United States. U.S. citizens were to be held in quarantine on Navy ships, special medical ships that they have, and other facilities they have in places in Sierra Leone and other areas. This is unprecedented. We have top virologists in Bild in Germany saying 5 million will get it by December. The UN says 1.4 million. Most top virologists say it's beginning to go slightly airborne. That means it isn't hardy airborne, but it is clearly leaning towards being somewhat airborne. If that is the case, and that's why we're seeing this huge outbreak in Africa, you've got 7 nations now with it over in Africa. You have got tens of thousands of people a week flying in and out of West Africa into every major city in the world. And there should have already been a quarantine on Sierra Leone and a quarantine on Ghana and a quarantine on these other countries. That was standard procedure. It is a guarantee that you will get Ebola all over the world. Guaranteed with a 22-day carrier incubation period. We've talked to top medical doctors on this, so this is not my opinion. That's why we kept saying this is insane. There should have been an immediate embargo. Those countries, Sierra Leone and others, are literally collapsing right now, but they're letting the airport still run as middle-class and wealthy Africans and Westerners flee the nation. Then Obama injects 3,300 untrained U.S. troops into the middle of hell-hot zones. We kept telling people months ago and got attacked by the mainstream media because they didn't want people to be warned up front. This had all the telltale signs of bare minimum allowing a crisis to get out of hand, aiding and abetting it, not letting a good crisis go to waste. But we know there's laboratories in the U.S., England, Africa, and other areas that have souped up Ebola. We've played frontline pieces, Nova pieces, admitting airborne Ebola escaped and killed monkeys in another lab in 1989. See, we're informed. And the system preys on the American people's ignorance to say, oh, don't listen to InfoWars, don't listen to Drudge. Don't listen to WorldNet Daily. Don't listen to those crazy people that actually have top scientists and medical doctors and virologists on. Oh, look, InfoWars is reporting on CDC medical journals 2 years ago saying Ebola had gone airborne. We got attacked. A month later, New York Times admitted they believe it's going airborne with a top virologist. The issue here is that I'm in Austin, Texas, literally 3 hours from Dallas. Joe Biggs is up there outside the hospital area where Rick Perry's set to give a press conference in T-minus 45 minutes or so, about 47 minutes from now. This is very serious because you have a huge Nigerian population, huge West African population in Dallas. And again, it's so politically correct that you've got the emergency managers in Dallas County openly saying, well, we're still going to tell the kids to stay home with this guy, but everything's okay. That entire family, ladies and gentlemen, should be locked up in a quarantine facility watching television and having a nice day so an epidemic doesn't get out of hand. You get one person giving it to 5, they give it to 10, they give it to 20, they give it to 40, they give it to 80, they give it to 100, and you see the numbers going up. Once you get about 10 or 15 people that have this, it's going to be unstoppable. And you're going to have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, maybe billions of people with Ebola, and on record, I wanted on record that we pointed this out. It's not hard to point this out. This is default. This is default. That the minute there was a major outbreak, you shut down the aircraft coming in, or you make people sign a form that they will go on aircraft that everybody is then quarantined for at least a month once they get off of it. Instead, we knew the fix was in, so they would have plausible deniability a month ago when they started flying all these medical workers in with Ebola and putting them in regular hospitals that aren't even level 2, level 3 containment. Ladies and gentlemen, that violates federal law. This is a disaster. They want to use this to roll out more Homeland Security. Do I think this is the end of the world? No. I predicted they're going to have phases. Listeners, you've heard this hundreds of times. Phases of bio releases, souped up bio weapon releases to train us to go under medical tyranny, to train us to go under forced inoculation. So when they really release the deadly airborne Ebola or mousepox down the road to wipe out 90% of the population, a la 12 monkeys, the people will do what they're told, believing that they were protected by the government in the first few big outbreaks. This is directly out of the globalist script, ladies and gentlemen, directly out of V for Vendetta. This is how you conquer America and conquer the world. This is how you get the guns. This is how you bring in the tyranny, is you bring in terrorists. Notice how Texas is under attack. Everyone's fleeing the rest of the country to come to Texas because we have lower taxes and are libertarian conservative. The border is wide open, and they've targeted bringing in the buses. Texas. They've targeted Texas with all their different programs. Now Texas is where the Ebola is popping up. You can just see all of this going on, ladies and gentlemen, and now Paul Watson comes to visit the U.S. the first time he's visited me here in 9 years or 8 years, and now you're here in Texas, Paul Watson, 200 miles from Ebola, which they're very calmly saying, oh, yeah, some more of the family probably has it. It's no big deal. It's like getting a cold or something. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this very slowly. The so-called U.S. government, the same ones that funded Al-Qaeda and ISIS, have now allowed dozens and dozens of people in with Ebola and did no screening at the airports for people coming in out of West Africa, with scientists saying 1.4 million with computer models are set to get it on the low end, 5 million now on the high end. That's by December. We're not talking about when they usually panic when 20 people have Ebola. I mean, the previous top outbreaks were a couple hundred. We're talking about countries collapsing right now as people are hanging basically off the aircraft to fly here, and our government's going, come on in. So the bottom line is the government, whatever's behind this, cannot and will not protect you. You've got to protect yourselves. And it is so disgusting, like a slow-motion automobile accident, to be seeing this unfold right now. Folks better be hitting their knees and praying to God, because if this Ebola gets out, and if it spreads with our compromised immune systems here in the United States and all the vaccines that people have been taking, and if it starts mutating with other things that are going on right now and all the other mystery illnesses sweeping the country of kids that have been vaccinated, you can see with Dr. Pianka, a top eugenicist, saying 8 years ago that soon the airborne Ebola is coming and will kill 90%, and 95% standing ovation at the Texas Academy of Sciences with people crying with joy as he projected a huge screen of red skulls on the wall. This is mainstream news, folks. Look it up. The FBI went and talked to him about it, and they began crying in their death cult of victory. This is a death cult. They're listening in Austin right now at University of Texas. They are the most sick people you could ever imagine, and I've been warning you. My film Endgame warns you that they are all over Ebola. The globalists have been messing with it, screwing around with it constantly. This is one of their main arsenal weapons. So is mousepox. Kills 90+% of people. And again, I don't think this is the big one. But it could be. I believe it's just a primer. Paul Watson, what do you think?
Well, what I've noticed, Alex, is this kind of simpering and patronizing tone from the media this morning, just watching it on the television. You know, telling people not to panic, telling people that this hysteria, this outbreak is going to be limited, when they're the ones who attacked us for warning about it, 1-2 months ago. CBS News put out a big hit piece against us. They dropped the ball. I mean, this patient was walking around in Dallas for 4 days. They didn't even ask him his travel history, where he came from.
Default positions. They didn't do status quo. They turned the defaults off, just like NORAD was ordered to stand down on 9/11.
Reuters just reported experts question 2-day delay in admitting Texas Ebola patient. So as I said before the break, this guy was basically walking around Dallas for 4 days. He got antibiotics 2 days before they isolated him. So he went in to get treatment. They asked no questions whatsoever of his travel history, which numerous health professionals are questioning this morning. We also have an article out of Infowars.com, actually. UN says Ebola outbreak worse than HIV SARS. This is David Nabarro, who heads up the United Nations Ebola response, told the Sydney Morning Herald that Ebola is the scariest disease he has ever encountered during his career. I can remember in Africa early on in HIV thinking this is unspeakably awful situation, but it will not decimate the population. So he's now saying that this could be worse than HIV for Africa, which has obviously killed millions and millions of people. We had the top German virologist a couple of weeks ago saying that Ebola basically could burn itself out in West Africa, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and not stop until it's claimed basically all of the population. Alex Jones, more comments on this breaking Ebola news. I mean, the question that I've got, Alex, is that British Airways stopped all the flights from West Africa going into Britain, and yet the United States basically did nothing.
Well, look, it's because the globalists are clearly behind this, or it's like a wildfire's coming and they order the firefighters to stand down because they want to destroy a neighborhood, build condos on it. Either way, the government is behind this. Either way, the defaults, and any emergency manager listening, any hazmat person listening, any CDC person listening, any health department person listening, any medical doctor listening, any nurse listening, anyone who's informed, and I want to get some articles out about this just showing the previous defaults. You do what France did, you do what England did, you do what others do, you do what Saudi Arabia did a month and a half ago. When they had an Ebola patient show up, you shut the flights down, or you warn people there's going to be a major fee associated with this. You're going to have to pay for it. We're going to put you in quarantine for a month. This is the default. And then meanwhile, while this Ebola outbreak's going on, the border's wide open, and Geraldo Rivera comes out and attacks Matt Drudge and says, how dare you say Ebola could come into the U.S.? Well, guess what, Geraldo? And again, Geraldo says he's a listener. I've been on his show many times. He's been on ours. I don't want to attack him, but he's full of bull. We were not being racist against Hispanics because we pointed out it's insane to have wide open borders. We were pointing it out because it shows how the government it just is literally out of control. And this is why this is happening. Until about 20 years ago, if government screwed up, people got fired. And that's been the way it's always been. Okay? If a Roman general lost a battle, he got fired or executed. Okay? If a captain did something wrong, they got in trouble. If a centurion got in trouble. This is thousands of years old. When they screw up in Katrina and order a stand down, FEMA gets double the funding and gets to take the guns. On 9/11, when NORAD stands down and the NSA spy on everybody, they get 5 times the fundings, or even more since then, for different federal departments and the police state bureaucracy. So no one gets in trouble. So they'll get a bunch of power and control, and the Military-Industrial Complex Medical Center and Obamacare will come in with the federal emergency and declare their big victory and use this crisis under Cloward and Piven to further bankrupt the nation. They've been shutting down our power plants, shutting down our industry, putting the highest tax rates in to drive people overseas. This is another attempt, like Godzilla attacking Tokyo, to destroy America while sucking us dry. It is a premeditated plan to bring down the country. The globalists are following Agenda 21. Cloward and Piven is only one small sociological example of their plan. I mention it because people know what Cloward and Piven is. Bottom line, there is zero debate. No one can debate me. I challenge people to debate me. I challenge folks to call in the next hour when David Knight is giving analysis and co-hosting with you ahead of Gerald Celente. I challenge somebody to try to call in here and tell us how they didn't either cook it up and let it come in here, or how they didn't order a stand down to let it come in here. They did it. And I want Rick Perry to be asked by the press conference, are you going to challenge Obama to shut down the flights out of West Africa? That's what Rick Perry needs to be asked by the media. I guarantee you nobody is going to bring that up. That's a governor's job hit with Ebola, is to say to the president, Mr. President, order flights out of West Africa shut down now, and people that have bounced in from other countries with a West African original epicenter where they came from, if they're originating out of West Africa, they need to be put on quarantine. And if you're coming to America, you're going to be quarantined, because here's the problem. Once they let it get out of hand, they're going to start quarantining everybody with Obama's executive order, claiming if you have any respiratory illness, you can be locked up forever, which they've never done before. That was 2 months ago. We said, folks, get ready. Now a respiratory thing has popped up. This thing stinks to high heaven, ladies and gentlemen. This is an emergency situation. Call the White House. Tell them, we know you're behind it. You're going to get the blame. You're going to get the blame. That's the only chance we've got to make them do their job.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force from InfoWars Life.